Hello everyone. What macro lens should you be using as a beginner macro photographer? We're going to get into it right now, so stay tuned. Hello everyone, my name is Constantine. Welcome to my channel on macro photography, where I like to make little things a very big deal. First of all, I want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have subscribed already to my channel. I really appreciate it. Please, if you like the content here, please click that subscribe button, share it out, ring that bell so you don't miss a video. At some point, as you continue to learn more and more about macro photography, you're going to want to use a camera where you can change out lenses and use a dedicated macro lens. So you might ask yourself, what kind of macro lens should you buy as a new macro photographer? Well, that really depends on three different things. First of all, the make and model of the camera that you currently have, the type of macro photography that really inspires you and you like to get involved in, and of course, we can't forget your financial budget. So let's address each of these in turn. First of all, let's take a look at the make and model of camera you're using, or maybe you're looking at a digital camera to buy and you want to make the right choice. Really, when it comes to digital cameras, you can't go wrong. Canon, Nikon, Pentax, Sony, they're all very good quality cameras. You're going to get very good quality images in them. There really isn't any particular reason to choose one or the other, at least when it comes to macro photography. You might have other requirements if you're a portrait photographer or wedding photographer or something like that, where the conditions of your environment might dictate the kind of camera you use. When it comes to macro, a good quality camera with a decent macro lens, it almost doesn't matter. Not only do you have the major brand names to consider, but you want to consider whether or not you use a digital SLR or mirrorless. Now, a lot of people lump the mirrorless cameras in the same classification as digital SLRs, but they are not an SLR camera. SLR actually means single lens reflex. Your digital SLR actually has a mirror in it, which once you click the shutter button, moves out of the way to expose the sensor in the background. And that's how you get your digital image. A mirrorless camera, of course, does not have that as an option. But you can change out the lenses to get a better quality image. Each camera manufacturer has their own lens mount system. You can't use a Canon lens on a Nikon camera, at least not without a special adapter. So lenses are not universal. And each camera manufacturer might have multiple lens mount systems depending on the camera range, whether or not we're talking low-end, intermediate, or high-end digital camera or mirrorless. In the case of Canon, they actually support 4 different lens mount systems. The EF full frame lens mount, the EFS crop sensor lens mount, the M mount for some of the original mirrorless cameras, and also the new R mount for the EOS R series of mirrorless cameras. Nikon similarly has 3 different lens mount systems, and the other camera manufacturers might have a couple as well. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about all the camera manufacturers. I use a Canon camera myself. Part of the reason for that is more historical than any actual practical reason. When I first started getting into digital photography, I picked up a Canon point and shoot because there really was only a few different options available at the time. This is many, many years ago. And then when I got into using a digital SLR, really the top 2 brands were Canon and Nikon at the time. And the person who was mentoring me had a Canon camera, and it made it very easy to swap out lenses to try different things that he was teaching me. So I went with Canon at that time, and I've basically stuck with them ever since. A lot of photographers are very passionate about their brand of camera, and quite frankly, it really doesn't matter. Use what you feel comfortable with and what you can afford. In my case, I use a Canon 70D, which is a crop sensor digital SLR camera. Now, this particular camera actually supports both the full frame and crop sensor lens systems. So I can pick up a lens for either type and use it quite comfortably on my camera. A full frame camera generally doesn't have that option. If you cannot mount a crop sensor lens on a full frame camera. The exceptions to that rule seems to be Nikon. Some of their cameras seem to allow that capability. However, if you use a crop sensor lens on a full frame camera, you're going to get some really strong vignetting on the outer edges of your images. So you should really use a full frame lens for a full frame camera. The second thing to consider is the type of macro photography you want to do. Do you want to be able to go outside and take pictures of bees and other insects that might be moving around rapidly? Or do you want to focus a little bit more on still life, maybe some studio macro photography? This might dictate a little bit about the type of lens you choose. If you're going to be taking pictures of insects that are quick moving, you want to capture that bumblebee while it's flying in front of you, I would strongly recommend a lens that has an autofocus system, and particularly a very quick autofocus system so that you don't miss out on the shot. My particular lens that I currently use and have used for many years is a Tokina 100mm macro lens. And one of the problems that it has actually is the fact that the autofocus on it is very, very slow. So not really conducive about capturing those fast insects that I want to. I have learned over the years to use the manual focus on it instead and be very, very quick with it. But I've still missed a lot of shots. And as a beginning macro photographer, you don't really want to miss those opportunities because you might only get one when you go out into the wild. If you focus a lot on studio photography, you're doing dandelion clocks or you're working with insects such as jumping spiders that may not move a lot or might sit and pose for you, then you can use a lens that is strictly manual focus without too much effort. The third thing to consider, of course, is your budget. Lenses are expensive bits of equipment, but they are worth the investment. You want that lens to last a long time. My Tokina lens here has actually lasted me about 10, 12, 15 years. I can't remember when I actually picked it up. But the only problem with it is the very slow autofocus. You want to be able to have that regardless of what lens you buy. So finances are not always the deciding factor. If there's only a couple $100 difference between a third-party lens and a little bit more expensive brand name lens, I would probably suggest waiting and saving up the extra little bit of coin to get that brand name lens. If, however, you're looking at a budget where that third-party lens is half the cost of your manufacturer's lens, then you might want to take a stronger look at that and see if it's going to be worth saving up or not, particularly if the lenses have the exact same basic specifications. So those are the major things to consider when choosing a macro lens. Another thing you might want to consider is the size of the lens. Macro lenses run anywhere from 60 millimeters on up to 180 millimeters. Most macro photographers use lenses in the area of 90 to 100, 105. Part of that is because it gives you a decent working distance. You don't need anything super long like 180, but the mid-range at about 100 millimeters-ish is a good choice. For me personally, here are my top picks for the Canon series of digital cameras because it's the one that I know most about. First of all, there is the Canon 100mm f2.8L series macro lens. Very high quality lens, strong build, recommended by a lot of Canon macro shooters. Second, there is the Canon 65mm MPE f2.8 lens. This is a 5-time macro lens. So not only do you get 1:1 macro, there is an optical zoom which will increase the magnification up to 5 times, bringing you that much closer to your subject. Some manual focus options include the IRIX 150mm 2.8 macro lens, a very, very good choice and is getting some very good reviews. And the Laowa 100mm 2.8 2:1 macro lens. Again, not only does it do macro, it will enlarge your subject 2 times to get just that greater detail and closer to your subject. So those are all the things you want to consider when choosing a macro lens or purchasing a new macro lens. For me personally, I am going to buy the Laura 100mm 2.8 2-to-1 macro lens. I'm really excited about that. I just need to save up a little bit more money to do so. And when I do buy it, I will actually do a full-on review of the lens. Next time, we're going to go over the brand new macro lighting frame, which I made recently and I'm really super excited about. In the meantime, click here to subscribe and like and share this video if you like the content. Additionally, there are a couple of videos here and here to take a look at for more information. Until next week, my name is Constantine with Ion Photography, where we make little things a very big deal.